A disembodied voice reflects on the nature of truck accidents in modern stories, where they are a common cause of death. The voice notes that truck drivers are professionals who work with the utmost care, making such incidents regrettable. A sincere apology is offered. The voice then reveals that its own demise was also the result of a truck accident. On a dark road, a single shoe lies near the rear of a large white truck, a silent testament to the event. Reflecting on a short life, the voice finds it hard to assign blame and feels no resentment. It recalls a quiet, introverted existence, filled with a love for anime and games. Yet, this life was not without its joys. The voice remembers being in the soccer club, enjoying sports, and maintaining a good relationship with family, finding it all reasonably fulfilling. Adrift in a sparkling void, the being considers its lack of strong attachments to the world left behind. It had expected to struggle against death, but instead feels a profound calm, as if reaching a state of enlightenment. That tranquility shatters. A sharp pain lances through its head as a single, powerful regret surfaces. There was an unfinished game. Consciousness returns with a jolt. Its eyes open to a startling sight. A vast, ornate plate piled high with meat. The setting is opulent. A single place setting with a knife and fork suggests some kind of celebration, yet it seems impossible that this feast is meant for one person alone. Its attention shifts to its own hand, which looks disturbingly unfamiliar. As it moves, a sharp cracking sound echoes nearby. Is this my hand? It wonders in confusion. Looking closer, it sees the strange swelling, the complete lack of a defined wrist. As this shocking realization dawns, a young woman in a servant's uniform rushes to its side, her face etched with concern. "Lord Carl," she asks urgently, "what happened?" He recoiled, his mind struggling to comprehend what was happening to his body as sweat and a strange miasma poured from his skin. The servant girl's voice cut through his panic, calling him Carl-sama and asking if he was unwell, urgently telling him not to touch something. His gaze fell downward, and his swollen hand reached out, pressing against the cold stone floor. The intricate craftsmanship felt familiar, reminding him of the lobby of a luxury hotel. On the floor, his eyes traveled up to an ornate, gilded frame. He realized with a jolt that it was a mirror, and he was about to see his own reflection. The face staring back was a stranger's, a flabby, swollen mass of fat. "Me?" he thought in disbelief. The servant girl, her voice laced with concern, asked if he was hurt. He barely registered her question. As he stared at her familiar face, a name surfaced from the depths of his memory. "Tiana," he murmured. Hearing her name, the girl's face brightened with a relieved smile. She expressed her gratitude that he hadn't hit his head. The recognition was now certain. He knew this girl. The memories flooded in. She was Tiana, a half-elf, one of the main heroines from a game he had been completely obsessed with. And if she was here, serving him, then he had to be the eldest son of the Duke Hamilton family. The full, horrifying truth crashed down on him. He was Carl the Hamilton, the story's villainous noble, fated to be killed by the protagonist. This world was that of Magic Trap, a hardcore erotic game. He remembered his peculiar enjoyment of it. Not playing as the hero, but watching the beautiful girls fall into traps set by the repulsive, fat villain he had now become. Tiana's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She pleaded with Carl-sama, her tone full of genuine worry, begging him to stop eating so much and warning that he would soon be too large to even walk. The specific words struck him like lightning. He recognized that voice, that exact line of dialogue. This was it, an important, unchangeable turning point in the game. His mind flashed back to the cruelty of the boy whose body he now inhabited. The original Carl had lashed out at his servant, Tiana, accusing her of looking down on him with pity, just like all the other women. He had snarled a vow to make sure she could never look at him with such eyes again, leaving her utterly shocked. This bitterness had deep roots. Since he was a small child, Carl had loved to eat, a simple pleasure that unknowingly set the stage for future tragedy. In his early youth, his chubbiness was even considered somewhat cute. But as he grew and approached puberty, that perception began to change. He began to overhear the whispers of others in the household. They called his body embarrassing, questioning how a distinguished family like the Hamiltons could leave such a thing unchecked. The words stung, and he would flee from their presence. Their hushed insults followed him, labeling his appearance an ugliness and a disgrace to the household. Confused, he would confide in one of his magical tools, a small white mouse. He couldn't understand the discrepancy, wondering if he'd misheard, since everyone was always so smiling and kind to his face. But the magical tool only confirmed his worst fears, relaying conversations it had gathered from others. They called him a pig who no woman, not even a commoner, would want to marry. They questioned the dignity of the Duke's eldest son, declaring he couldn't be shown in public. He realized then that the smiles were a facade, maintained only by the authority of his father, who remained present but distant. With tears welling in his eyes, the boy understood that deep down, this contempt was how everyone truly saw him. That night, alone in his bed, a new fear took root. He began to believe that when he grew up, someone like him might never be able to become the head of the family. He was, in his own estimation, nothing more than the shame of the family. He recalled the depths of the original Carl's despair, of a lonely child on the floor, surrounded by food. The thought that it consumed him was a bitter one, that he should be ashamed for the mere fact of being alive. The memory of a rich, roasted meal served as a symbol of that gluttonous sorrow. This recollection bled into another, a confrontation with his servant, Tiana. He remembered accusing her of looking down on him with pity, vowing to make her avert her gaze forever. Internally, he had seethed with the conviction that all women were liars. From Tiana's perspective, the memory was a grim one. The chronicle of events was stark. It was then that she lost her innocence to him. The new soul inhabiting Carl's body processed this with a strange realization. The original Carl had also been a virgin. The entire situation was baffling. To be in a game-like world when he should be dead. He pondered the meaning of this. Could it be that the original soul's lingering regret over dying a virgin was the force anchoring him to this world? If he could somehow resolve that regret, he wondered if the original soul might finally find peace. As this thought took form, his hand began to move, reaching out and startling Tiana, who stood before him. In a sudden, shocking gesture, he swept the plate of food from the table. It crashed to the floor, shattering loudly and leaving Tiana wide-eyed in disbelief. Before she could fully process the act, he reached out and gently took her hand. She looked at him, utterly confused, and murmured his name. He met her gaze with a newfound seriousness and spoke a single, unexpected word, diet. He then bowed his head, his grip on her hand becoming a silent plea. Help me, he asked, his voice earnest. He abruptly started to run, catching Tiana completely by surprise. Looking up at him with a mixture of concern and exasperation, she clasped her hands and called out, telling Lord Carl that he couldn't just start running all of a sudden. The life of an ordinary high school student had been a short one. While he held no particular attachment to it, there was one lingering regret concerning sex. Now, for some reason, he found himself in the world of an adult game he used to play. He stared at his reflection in disbelief. If he was going to be reincarnated, it should have been as the protagonist, destined for a dreamlike harem. Instead, he had become a villainous noble, trapped in a swollen body where even living a normal life seemed an arduous task. He briefly entertained the thought of embracing his new role. As a villain, he should be able to use any means necessary to have his way with the beautiful women of this world. After all, he had enjoyed such immoral scenes in the game before. But the notion was quickly discarded. That was not the life he was here to lead. He was certain that if he were to commit such a crime, his soul would never find peace. His new reality was Carl's mansion, a year and a half before the game's main events at the Academy. This was the true turning point, the period where the original Carl was fated to fall into darkness. There had to be a meaning to his arrival at this specific time. A single, clear objective formed in his mind. He needed to diet, and to do that, he would need help. With that decision made, a sense of calm washed over him. He knew, based on how he felt in that moment, that he had made the right choice. His resolve was absolute. He could not allow a pure, innocent, and beautiful girl to be covered in pork miso soup. His strange internal declaration was cut short as he met the gaze of his servant, Tiana, who looked back at him, utterly bewildered. Her expression suddenly crumpled, and tears began to stream down her face. What's wrong? Carl asked, startled. He wondered if he had said something odd. Through her sobs, she shook her head. No, I'm just so happy. Clasping his hand, she explained her tears. She had been personally chosen by the master to care for him, yet she felt she was failing to repay that gratitude, forced to watch helplessly as he started down a ruinous path. To think, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, that you would rely on someone like me. She held his hands firmly, her eyes alight with newfound purpose. She promised to do her utmost, with all sincerity, so that Lord Carl could finally live a proper, human-like life. With her resolve solidified, she immediately began preparations. Her expression turned serious as she reached beneath her dress, unfastening a coiled rope from a garter on her thigh. This rope was a tool meant to help him return to the way he should be. As she held it, a vision of past chaos filled the air, a dining room in disarray, with tables overturned and food scattered everywhere, a testament to his former gluttony. To demonstrate its use, she brandished the rope like a wand. She explained to Carl that this was a common magic called moving, though she noted that only she possessed the skill to move such a wide variety of objects with different weights and properties all at once. He watched her, a memory from his past life surfacing. He recalled from the game that adding Tiana to the party boosted everyone's stats. It was just basic housekeeping magic, but he understood now that such skills were fundamental to human life. With her help, he felt certain of success. His confidence renewed, he gazed out at the grand estate. His goal was clear and simple. He was aiming for a slow, peaceful life. That momentary peace was shattered by a tremendous crash. A nearby door was violently smashed open, causing Tiana to cry out in shock. He turned, startled, asking what she had just said. Tiana, her eyes wide with alarm, repeated the names she'd uttered in her shock. The Borgia Duke's family and Lady Erica. His expression grew serious. He explained that he wasn't the only one who needed to diet, proposing that he and Lady Erica do it together. Tiana stared, horrified by the implication. She knew that Lady Erica hadn't appeared in public for a long time due to supposed health reasons. Her mind raced, questioning why Lord Carl would suddenly care about Lady Erica. An image of the young lady came to mind, small and seated alone. Tiana knew the sad truth. It wasn't that Lady Erica didn't want to go out, it was that she physically couldn't. As she watches, the sound of straining wood and metal fills the air. A carriage wheel groans under immense pressure, while unseen men shout encouragement, urging each other to push harder. The source of the struggle is an ornate carriage, tilting precariously as servants strain to move it. Inside, Lord Carl is told to shift toward the center. Tiana and another servant observe from a distance. Her companion remarks on how rare it is for Lord Carl to venture out, wondering about their destination. Upon hearing the destination, the other servant reacts with shock. Tiana confirms her surprise, explaining that there's been a long-standing rivalry between the two duchies, the Hamiltons and the Borgias. The two servants then turn their gaze toward the horizon, where the grand estate of the Borgia family sits atop a distant hill. Inside the carriage, Carl's mind drifts to the future he knows from the game. He recalls that in about a year and a half, with no connections currently between their families, he and Erica were fated to team up as a pair of villains. He reflects on the grim reality that no matter how he tries to live a decent life, if Erica continues down her current path, her only future is that of a villainous noble. That path, he realizes, could ultimately lead to her being killed by the story's protagonist. This is the very reason he must intervene. His thoughts solidifying into resolve, he turns to Tiana with a serious expression. He declares that they must save Erica, along with himself. His determination triggers a memory from 5 years ago. A younger, slimmer Carl stands before a similarly slim Lady Erica, who is being attended to by a servant. He looks at her with admiration and tells her she is beautiful. The memory continues as his younger self elaborates, saying that her figure makes her décolletage stand out. Clasping his hands with sincere delight, he proclaims that the evening will be a special day. In the memory from years past, Lady Erica stood with Prince Libera of the Yoras Kingdom. He held a rose, remarking that after 2 years together, he found her skin to be as soft as a marshmallow. For her part, Erica was determined to show her gentle and pure prince her very best self. She waited with breathless anticipation, certain that today would be the day. When a servant informed her that the prince was still preparing, Erica simply waved it off, stating that she knew the way to the room and had been waiting for a long time already. But in the room she was heading towards, Prince Libera was embracing another woman. He leaned in for a kiss, declaring that he would announce their engagement in front of everyone. The woman's gaze shifted coolly to the side. Her glance was directed at the doorway, where Erica had just appeared. The woman, Rebecca, identified Erica as the delusional girl the prince had mentioned. When Libera stammered, Rebecca cut him off, stating it was a good opportunity and dismissing his past with Erica as him simply not knowing any other women. She continued, her tone sharp and cruel, explaining that boys instinctively prefer a woman with a slim waist, unlike a fat girl who has never worn a corset. The cruel words struck Erica with the force of a physical blow. In that single, horrifying moment, she came to a devastating realization. Being fat was a sin. Every compliment she had ever received about her skin was merely a polite platitude for someone with no other redeeming qualities. And following that devastating moment, the only outlet she could find for her stress was food. In her despair, she could only pile fat upon fat. The memory fades, returning to the present day outside the Grand Borgia estate. The family butler, a man named Scalon, calls out urgently for Lord Yohane. A fist connects with a sharp crack, as Duke Hamilton strikes a young man across the face with unrestrained fury. Just moments before, the Borgia family butler, Scalon, had been urgently pleading with his master, Yohane, the family's eldest son. Scalon insisted there was no time for jokes and that he must come at once. But Yohane merely chuckled, remarking that the butler had certainly adapted to the Borgia family's dramatic ways. His amusement soured into suspicion as he was led along. He wondered aloud what possible business the eldest son of the Hamilton family could have there. The question brought forth a memory of observing Carl Hamilton. He recalled seeing the boy's servant, Tiana, encouraging him to push just a little further, prompting Yohane to muse on the idea of Carl dieting. Returning to the present confrontation with Duke Hamilton, he voiced his thoughts with scorn. He told the Duke that dieting is something one does alone, questioning how Carl could have been aware of the concept, yet failed to notice his own body changing. Scalon, sensing the rising tension, cried out his lord's name in a desperate attempt to intervene. But it was too late. Duke Hamilton lunged forward, grabbing Yohane's collar. He snarled that this was very much his business, declaring that it had become a matter of life and death for Lady Erica. The Duke's knuckles were white, his grip unyielding as he held the young lord in place, his words hanging heavily in the air. As the threat was uttered, a vision of the past surfaced, a painfully thin Lady Erica standing forlornly at a high window, while far below, Prince Libera and a crowd of others looked up, calling out to her. Carl's mind raced, analyzing the world's logic. He considered that if beauty is sexual attractiveness, and that is instinctively linked to high reproductive ability, often signified by a plump body shape, then extreme obesity should not be excluded from standards of appearance. Yet he knew the truth. Villains are supposed to be ugly, and in this world, being fat was equated with being ugly. His thoughts continued, acknowledging that even plus-size figures could be beautiful. But he realized that to avoid the fate of a villain in a world dominated by visual supremacy, he had no choice but to change his current state. This terrifying realization manifested physically in the Borgia family's entrance hall. Carl trembled, sweat pouring down his face, as a mental fat flag was raised. He would die from metabolic syndrome long before the protagonist could ever kill him. Tiana, his servant, held his arm in concern, asking if he was all right, while Yohane Borja coolly observed, concluding that a diet was inevitable. Yohane turned his attention to Scaron, Erica's dedicated butler, and inquired if Carl's state was related to Erica's life. Scaron confirmed this was true. He explained that Lady Erica had become reclusive after painful experiences, and that years of inactivity and poor diet had caused her to lose nearly all her muscle. For the Borja family, who valued strength above all, this condition was as good as death. He continued, stating that Erica hadn't wielded a sword in years, let alone lifted anything heavier than a dish. Now, all she seemed to do was destroy every toilet in the house. Hearing this, Carl interjected, asking Yohane how they could possibly lure Erica out of her room before a diet could even begin. Yohane understood immediately that Carl wished to borrow the power of the Borja family. He asked if Carl would cooperate with him on the diet, and Carl agreed, on the condition that Yohane had a plan. His expression hardened with resolve. First, he stated there were things they needed to prepare. Following Carl's instructions, Scaron returned with the requested materials. Carl turned to Tiana, thanking her for her help. She responded with a firm yes, ready to assist. A hand, wrapped in cloth, gripped a thick rope tightly as scattered papers floated in the background. The preparations culminated in a startling scene. Lady Erica stood in the center of a room, entangled in a web of ropes, surrounded by what looked like shattered fragments of mirrors. She looked up, her expression unreadable. While Lady Erica remained in her room, elsewhere on the estate grounds, Yohane Borja and his butler Scalan observed the proceedings. Scalan remarked that it was quite impressive, though Yohane seemed to question its relevance to the task at hand. The object of their attention, a patterned ball, slammed into the back of a net with surprising force. The one responsible for the powerful kick was Carl. Holding another ball, he assessed his own work, noting that it still needed improvement but would suffice for the moment. As he stood on the field, Tiana approached, declaring his performance well done and announcing she had prepared the next item. From a distance, Lady Erica watched this exchange, her eyes wide with surprise at seeing Carl receive such praise. A faint blush appeared on her cheeks as she processed the unusual scene. The earnest praise from Tiana gave Carl pause. He had to restrain an impulse to pat her head. He wondered why she looked at him with such unwavering eyes, considering he had been repressed since childhood and had often lashed out at her. He then turned his attention to Yohane, who stood on the muddy field, and asked what Carl intended to do there. In response, Carl presented a small diagram of a field, stating that they would first go over the basic rules. Meanwhile, from her room, Lady Erica watched the strange activity unfold. Beads of sweat formed on her skin as she wondered if this was some new form of hand-to-hand combat training. Her gaze fixed on the goal set up outside. On the field, the game was underway. Tiana encouraged Carl, telling him that the best way to lose weight efficiently is to enjoy exercising. Carl, however, was already panting, frustrated that his weight remained the same no matter how much he ate. As a ball flew past, Yohane confirmed to an unseen player that the goal counted, clarifying that they were playing soccer. Despite the encouragement, the reality of the match was grim. The score was 5-0. Carl realized with dismay that they were losing badly. A chart revealed the teams for this game of mini-football. Carl and 4 footmen against a team of servants including Scalan, the head butler, the coachman, and the groom, with Tiana acting as referee. He found his current body to be a significant hindrance. While his ball control was no worse than the servants, his biggest challenges were gravity and chafing. He couldn't build up any speed, and everything ached. He mused that the servants, with their trained bodies and reflexes, had quickly grasped the knack of the game. It made him wonder if the nobles of this world had no concept of play, viewing all physical exertion as a form of combat training. As he lamented his physical state, one of the maids, Tiana, cheerfully complimented another player on a wonderful shot. He could only wish his own body would listen to him, even just a little more. Unseen by the players below, a pair of eyes watched the spectacle from a high window with rapt attention. Suddenly, a new figure burst onto the field. With a sharp whoosh, Yohane Borja intercepted the ball, his sudden appearance catching Carl completely by surprise. He landed with an air of complete confidence, the ball now resting perfectly at his feet as Scalan and another servant looked on. Without a moment's hesitation, he unleashed a powerful kick, sending the ball rocketing into the back of the net. Carl and Tiana could only watch, stunned by the display of skill. The impressive goal drew a voice from above. Lady Erica, leaning out of her window, asked if that was how one scored. Yohane looked up towards her. As Carl stared in shock at Erica's appearance, Scalan addressed the newcomer as Your Highness, confirming his royal status. Carl could only utter a surprised, "Oh," as he processed the new development. On the field, Lady Erica leaps into the air, her body surprisingly agile. The crowd erupts, cheering for her impressive shot. Below, Carl watches her, a thought crystallizing in his mind. The 200-kilogram girl was finally dancing under the sun. His brother, Yohane Borja, watches from a distance with a severe expression, uttering her name under his breath. Erica, having landed, turns to look back at him. He continues his assessment of the situation, reasoning that if he were to join, the teams would be uneven with 6 players. He concludes that this would not be fair. Therefore, with a sudden shift in demeanor, he declares that he has no choice but to join. Erica looks up at her big brother, surprised. With a confident grin, Yohane tells her not to hold back. The game intensifies. Yohane executes a powerful, acrobatic kick, sending the ball flying. Carl can only watch in amazement, realizing that Erika is not just heavy, but a heavy person who can move with incredible skill. A foot connects squarely with the ball. The resulting pass goes to Carl. Erika, caught up in a moment, praises him for the nice pass before sheepishly remembering they are on opposing teams. Carl looks momentarily flustered by the exchange. The brief camaraderie vanishes as Erika and Yohane lock eyes, their sibling rivalry igniting with fierce intensity. In the final moment, Erika shouts, vowing not to let him score. Yohane takes the shot, but the ball smacks against the goalpost with a loud clang. The match ends abruptly. An announcement declares victory for Team Carl, stunning the onlookers. After the game, Carl approaches Erika, pointing out that she is dressed in her nightgown. She looks down at herself, a bead of sweat on her cheek, admitting that it's strange, but her thought trails off, leaving the reason unspoken. She begins to explain, her gaze distant. As a child, she loved being active, but for some reason, she would shut herself away in a dark room. He recalls that it was she who took him outside, pulling him from his own isolation. He looks at her and states plainly that he does not find the current Erika to be ugly at all. This interaction marks a significant shift in their destined path. In the original timeline, Carl and Erika were not meant to grow close until their time at the Magic Academy. The protagonist of that story had once assured Carl that Erika would be fine due to her own strength. But now, by their own actions, Carl and Erika have forged a new path, steering away from the route that led to destruction. The story itself has been altered. Yohane Borja claps a hand on Carl's shoulder, declaring their hearts have been united through sports. He seems to feel something even more profound in this moment, though he doesn't finish the thought. Beside them, Erika flushes, overwhelmed by the turn of events. He continues, musing that perhaps it isn't just he and Erika who are changing. Down below, Carl and Erika now stand holding hands, surrounded by their family and servants. Unseen by the group, a stern figure with long, light hair observes them from a balcony above, his presence casting a shadow over the tender moment. Ira de Borja, commander of the Eyeless Kingdom Army, observes a group of children playing. She recognizes one as Erika, noting with surprise how happy the girl seems after having been withdrawn for so many years. Her gaze then shifts to the other children, a half-elf and a chubby boy, and she wonders who the latter is. The events leading to this moment began a few hours prior, at the Eyeless Royal Palace, where a figure strode purposefully through its grand halls. As she walked, a knight commented on her renowned beauty, calling her the Blood War Princess. Yet, with each step she took, a dark, wet splatter marked the polished floor. The source of the sound was the severed head she carried. Ira de Borja, commander-in-chief of the International Allied Forces, announced with a wide, triumphant grin that she had taken the head of the demon army's leader, her hands perpetually stained with blood. She presented herself before the king of Eyeless, who welcomed her back warmly. Her attention, however, was immediately drawn to the man standing beside the throne. Without hesitation, she confronted him, Aaron de Hamilton, Carl's father. She furiously demanded to know what a disgrace like him was doing in the king's presence, calling him by his family name, Borja. As she continued her tirade, the king of Eyeless intervened. He calmly explained that Aaron was resolving the kingdom's long-standing trade friction with the Makhine Empire. The king declared that both she and Aaron were the two pillars supporting the nation. Another noble remarked that Aaron was indeed suited to be prime minister. Ira reflected on this, recalling that Aaron, in his youth, had once held that very position with the king's full trust. With a somber expression, she thought to herself that she lacked the qualifications for such a role. This history was rooted in the past. At some point, Aaron's son, Carl, had vanished from public view, confined to his room. Shamed by this, Aaron resigned as prime minister. Rumors claim Carl continued a life of degeneracy, his body becoming so misshapen that he was no longer recognizable as human. From a balcony, Ira looked down, contemplating how aristocratic society prioritizes physical appearance. She wondered aloud if the pathetic, overweight boy below, the only son of a noble family, could truly be Carl. Down below, Carl clutched his chest, wheezing in distress. A carriage pulls up to the Hamilton estate. Lady Karen has returned from her training institute, bringing a school friend with her. Inside, preparations are made for her guests. A butler confirms with the staff that suites are ready for a celebration, as Lady Karen has awakened an attribute. He identifies her companions, a duchess from the economic powerhouse, the Makhine Empire, and a count's daughter from the Miklos kingdom. The young ladies settle in for tea. The Duchess Cassandra of the Makhine Empire remarks that the estate isn't very large, while the count's daughter, Elsa of the Miklos kingdom, agrees. Cassandra then criticizes the teacups as being old-fashioned, but Karen explains they are heirlooms passed down through generations, adding that her family's merchant house collects the finest goods from around the world. Elsa offers a more diplomatic view, stating that both well-cared-for old things and new things possess their own unique beauty. Cassandra concedes the point, but adds a competitive jab, reminding Karen that she awakened her own attribute first. Karen remains unfazed, calmly stating that she is consistently at the top of her class at the Orbis Training Institute. Changing the subject, Cassandra boasts of her greatest pride, her handsome and brilliant older brother, who runs the Orleans Trading Company. She proudly displays a necklace, explaining that her brother acquired its precious magic stone for her. The intense declaration startles Elsa. Her eyes widen in shock as she calls out Cassandra's name. Cassandra's composure shatters completely. She erupts into a fit of unsettling, loud laughter, her face contorted in obsessive glee as she chants her brother's title over and over. Karen and Elsa watch, taken aback by the sudden, manic display. After the outburst subsides, Karen calmly remarks that Cassandra's brother sounds wonderful. She then adds, to Elsa's surprise, that she also has an older brother, though he is a bit strange. With a soft, distant look, Karen recalls that her brother was a very kind person. Her thoughts drift back to a memory from her childhood. She remembers her older brother, Carl, reading to her. After their mother passed away, he was always by her side, taking the place of their often absent father and showering her with affection. But that was not the whole truth. In the dead of night, a younger Carl could be found in the kitchen, his face twisted in a grotesque expression as he greedily stuffed food into his mouth. A servant, hidden in the shadows, watched the secret display with a hand pressed to her lips. The Hamilton household staff gathered, their faces etched with worry. The butler lamented their fate, certain that the house was finished and they would all be cast out onto the streets. Cassandra, however, refused to despair, reminding him that Lady Karen was still with them. Elsa quickly agreed, adding that if Karen were to inherit, the household could be saved. But for the servant Tiana, this conversation sparked a frantic realization. Her body trembled as the weight of responsibility settled upon her. She understood that she had to support the house, not just for the other servants, but for her own father's future. And then, the most daunting part of that burden came to mind. The need to somehow cover her brother's enormous food expenses. Duchess Cassandra announces her departure, leaving a gift on the table for Karen and Elsa. As she leaves, Elsa is startled by a sudden noise, her attention snapping towards the source. Her thoughts, however, drift to Carl. She recalls seeing him at the training grounds before she entered service at the residence. Even back then, she remembers he was quite plump. Her quiet reflection is shattered by Karen's passionate declaration that being overweight is not a sin. She explains that Carl was originally chubby, but became gloomy and fat by default. All she wants is for him to return to his former self. Elsa agrees, prompting Karen to rail against the lookism of their noble society, insisting that this flawed perception is what truly needs to change. After her impassioned speech, their attention turns to the gift Cassandra had left. It is a single sheet of paper, described as something precious. Meanwhile, at the Borgia family estate, different preparations are underway. A soccer goal stands on a field. A maid presents a newly crafted ball, while two male servants express their approval of new, easy-to-move in uniforms. With the equipment ready, the servants gather. The maids from the Hamilton household have also come, bringing their numbers up to enough for an 11 versus 11 match. Just as they are organized, a commanding shout echoes across the grounds, directed at the assembled group. The shout draws an immediate response. Johann Borgia steps forward, angrily demanding to know who gave the Hamiltons permission to be on his land. At that moment, Ira de Borgia arrives, her eyes widening in shock as she sees another woman present. "Mother!" she cries out, questioning what is happening. The woman she addressed as her mother is focused intently on Lady Erica, who appears healthier. Her skin seems to have improved, and her face looks a bit tighter. Standing beside Erica, Carl explains that they're on a diet together. The revelation stuns Ira. "You too?" she demands, questioning when they became so close and fuming internally about the obnoxiously serious Hamilton brat. 10 minutes later, she channeled her frustration onto the soccer field. With a powerful kick that sent the ball flying, she roared that no one would be permitted to stand in her way. The physical exertion left her feeling invigorated. A wide, triumphant grin spread across her face as she laughed, remarking on how refreshed she felt. She turned to Carl, still laughing, and praised him as a genius for coming up with such an entertaining game. Her expression then softened, and she told him that he was a truly wonderful person. Her words triggered a memory for him. He recalled a moment at the Hamilton estate, looking at Lady Erica and thinking with sincere conviction how beautiful she was. This resolve had yielded results. A weigh-in showed his mass had dropped from 200 kilograms to 189. The servant attending him, Tiana, exclaimed in amazement that he had lost 11 kilograms. He continued his regimen, taking half baths and noting the effectiveness of consistent aerobic exercise. A constant battle waged within him, as his body instinctively craved sugar and fat. As he contemplated this, Tiana brought him a small bottle containing a drink. His sister, Karen, approached him with the bottle. She explained that a friend had given it to her as an appetite suppressant, but she had no need for it. Karen recalled that in the world of the game, this was what the overweight version of Carl would have for dinner. She seemed hesitant, noting that she and her brother had not spoken at length for a long time. She quickly became flustered, insisting that she wasn't trying to force him to lose weight. A gentle smile crossed his face as he realized that such a story path was no longer possible. He simply called out her name, Karen. His call was interrupted by the arrival of his father. The Duke asked if it was true that he had begun exercising, and Carl affirmed it. With the servants looking on with supportive smiles, the Duke encouraged him to continue his efforts with everyone's help. He watched his son, a wave of regret washing over him. The Duke believed that Carl's current state was a result of his own failure to properly engage with his children due to his busy schedule. He felt that, as their father, he should have done something sooner. He stood in stunned silence as a servant confirmed the day's plans. Carl was to spend time with Lady Erica of the Borgia family. The name hung in the air, leaving the Duke momentarily speechless. His confusion quickly erupted into fury. He demanded an explanation, questioning why his son's diet was connected to the Borgia family, and specifically to Ira de Borgia. The servant could only bow his head and plead for him to calm himself. His shouts of Borgia echoed through the manor, startling Carl and Tiana, who were nearby. The Duke raged on, questioning if they would all be content to let his son be found dead from loneliness, stained by his own condition. From the top of the staircase, Karen watched the scene unfold. She then turned her intense gaze to her brother below. She questioned if their father intended to steal away her brother's chance to become handsome. Carl could only look back, bewildered by her words. The motivation for Carl's efforts became clear. He was striving to keep pace with Lady Erica as they played together, feeling as though he was shining with every determined step. The servant, Tiana, administers the last of the medicine from a spoon, noting its remarkable effectiveness. Carl acknowledges this internally, realizing that the potion completely erases his otherwise overwhelming desire for high-calorie foods. His body, however, has developed a new fixation. With eyes squeezed shut, he reaches out desperately, no longer for food, but for the medicine itself, startling Tiana with his sudden craving. His plea is answered not by the servant, but by his sister, Karen, who appears holding a small, ornate vial. She calmly asks if this is what he wants, drawing his immediate attention to the bottle in her hand. She explains that she went to some trouble to acquire an extra supply. To secure it, she had to humble herself before Cassandra, but she considers it a small price to pay if it will help her brother become handsome, adding that she would do more if necessary. He tells her to stop, insisting that it is shameful for him, as the older brother, to rely on his younger sister to run his errands. Internally, he reflects that it would be unfair to rely on such a cheat when Erica is enduring her own cravings through sheer mental fortitude. He declares that for today, he will have only salad. Karen looks on, surprised by his sudden resolve. His motivation crystallizes into a single, powerful thought. If he is with Erica, he can succeed. This shared purpose fuels their efforts. At the Borgia family estate, Carl and Erica begin their training together, their combined determination manifesting as a palpable energy between them. 11 months pass at the Borgia's training facilities. The pair engage in badminton, tennis, and basketball, with the butler Scalon even devising unique games for Carl. The once dreaded estate transforms into a lively social venue, a place of shared effort and camaraderie. From a distance, Johann Borgia observes the scene with Scalon and another associate. He remarks that Lady Erica has changed, musing that with her current spirit, she might just be able to capture the third prince's heart once more. He scoffs, demanding to know what Scalon is talking about. The butler calmly replies that it is just as he says. Lady Erica will completely astound them. The men beside them exchange puzzled glances. The grand facade of the Borgia estate stands as a silent witness to the events unfolding within. Inside, Carl steps off a balance scale, the weights settling at 70 kilograms. Tiana stares, her eyes wide with disbelief as she whispers his name. He looks at his own tone back, realizing his body has truly changed. He turns and pulls the weeping Tiana into an embrace, confirming her unspoken thought. He has finally succeeded in his diet. Elsewhere in the manor, Erica gazes out a window, lost in thought. She repeatedly murmurs her brother's name, reflecting on how handsome he has become. Several months pass. From a balcony, Tiana watches Carl continue his rigorous training. He reflects that thanks to Tiana's help, he will not return to his villainous path. The news arrives. The Hamilton family is on their way. In preparation for their arrival, Erica dons an elegant dress, her expression hardening with resolve. Lady Erica of the Borgia family makes her entrance, her presence commanding the attention of two servants who whisper in awe of her stunning appearance. From a balcony above, Johann Borgia watches her arrival with a troubled expression, wondering aloud why she has come. A brief, silent moment passes between them, their profiles close as her hand rests gently on his arm. Suddenly, he throws himself in front of her, raising his arm defensively to shield her from an unseen danger. The scene changes, and Erica now has him pressed against the wall. Her voice is sharp as she demands to know why he won't come to her, questioning if he is done with her now that his diet is complete. He looks away, his mind racing. He had been deliberately avoiding Erica. He realizes, all to evade the ruined flag associated with her and Carl. But with her standing right before him now, so close, his carefully constructed resolve begins to crumble. His thoughts drift. While the current Erica is undeniably beautiful, he feels that something connected them long before, even when Carl was in the picture. As she holds him by the collar, a realization dawns on him. At that moment, he understood that their meeting held a greater meaning than simply avoiding a villainous plotline. It was then he first became aware of his true feelings for Erica. His internal monologue concludes with a raw admission. He was jealous. He had truly wanted to see her all along. In what appears to be a scene from a familiar story, a man with light hair speaks gently to a dark-haired woman. He informs her that they are having a baby and that they must now discuss what to do. The woman, Rebecca, stares back, her eyes wide with shock. The revelation sends a jolt through Carl, who watches from a hidden vantage point. He lets out a gasp of utter disbelief, a bead of sweat on his temple, as his servants Tiana and another peer out from behind him with similar expressions of astonishment. The scene shifts abruptly to the grand, imposing facade of the eyeless royal palace, the air heavy with a sigh of frustration. Within the palace walls, Ira de Borgia confronts the king of Eyeless, demanding to know why she must accompany Skalon. The king explains that while the demon lord has been defeated, the war is not truly over, and she is needed for negotiations with the remaining demon tribes. Skalon coolly interjects that his role is complete, and he will not act alongside the Borgia family, adding that the demon remnants are likely in hiding. With a decisive step, someone prepares to depart. Ira grabs Skalon's arm, her expression intense. She warns him that without her protection, a weak bureaucrat like him would surely be devoured by the demons. Skalon, however, appears completely unfazed by her threat. Her grip tightens as she presses her point, but he merely scoffs. Dismissing her as a musclehead, Skalon declares that he will be the one to undertake the mission, not her. A fully armored knight observes the tense exchange in silence. Meanwhile, Carl immerses himself in study within a vast library. Tiana approaches, carrying more books, and remarks on how diligently both he and another are working. Carl reflects on his own feelings of inadequacy, believing that despite being born into a ducal family, he is not suited to be a nobleman. He considers the skills he possesses, particularly the magic removal ability he has had for some time. His thoughts turn to the world's system of magic, which is divided between common magic, accessible to all, and elemental magic, which relies on one's innate attributes. He knows that to become a worthy lord for his people, he must master these abilities and become self-sufficient. His concentration is shattered by the hushed gossip of Tiana and another servant nearby. They speak of a pregnancy, mentioning Lady Erica's name and the idea of seeking her permission to discuss a marriage with him. The word marriage strikes Carl with physical force. The glass vial in his hand shatters as a new, fierce resolve forms in his mind. He must become a man worthy of Erica and confess his feelings to her. This new purpose solidifies within him. The concepts of engagement and marriage, which seemed like an unreal fantasy in his previous life, now feel tangible and wonderful. The thought of it brings a hopeful smile to his face. The talk of negotiations and Lady Erica's future continued. Some guests mused that for Erica to go to the negotiations herself was a wonderful development, and that she would surely find a splendid partner other than the prince. As this conversation unfolded, Karen Hamilton's thoughts drifted to the idea of bearing the child of the one she loves. Nearby, the butler, Skalon, approached Carl directly, catching him off guard. He informed the young lord that Lady Erica had been speaking of him, and that this very gathering was, in fact, for Carl's benefit. Carl was stunned, stammering in disbelief at how sudden it all was. Amidst this celebratory atmosphere, Tiana was tidying up, a small magical broom sweeping dust into a pan. From a nearby doorway, Karen Hamilton appeared, calling out her name and causing the servant to turn in surprise. Tiana asked what she was doing there, and Karen noted that she'd heard Tiana had become quite close with her brother. Tiana confirmed she was Lord Carl's personal attendant, but Karen's expression hardened. She clarified that was not what she meant, stating with intensity that there was something she needed to confirm with her. Several months ago, at the Orbis Training Institute's dormitory for girls, Lady Cassandra had commented on Carl's condition. Karen Hamilton recalls the moment, remembering Cassandra's disdainful thought that it would be a problem if her brother were like that. Karen herself believed that for the nobility, intelligence and dignity were paramount. Physical health and appearance were secondary concerns. This memory is tied to another, of a solemn ritual where she knelt in prayer. A priest had declared that such superficialities were unclean, proclaiming that in the eyes of God, only the health of mind and body was acceptable for the aristocracy. In the present, Carl's transformation is complete. His personal maid, Tiana, observes his new, handsome form from behind. She reflects that he has become more attractive than she could have ever imagined and wonders if he is pleased, admitting that she shares in that joy. He turns and holds Tiana close, her face pressed against his chest. Flustered, she thinks that this is not her place. From a distance, Karen watches the intimate moment, her eyes wide with surprise as she whispers her own name. Later, in a grand hall, Karen remarks to Tiana that her brother has changed quite a bit. Tiana confirms this, explaining that he now engages in sports every day to keep his body active. She elaborates on the grueling regimen, a diet completely free of fats, yoga, pressure point therapy, sweating in the sauna, intestinal cleansing with hot water, and daily massages to prevent skin from sagging. Tiana concludes by adding that Lady Karen's medicine was, of course, a great help as well. Karen listens intently. Karen acknowledges that Tiana did all of this for him and expresses her gratitude. She then admits to being jealous of Tiana, musing that as long as the maid is with her brother, he will be fine. Tiana, however, looks downcast and quietly disagrees. Her demeanor shifts abruptly. Tiana turns to Karen, her expression suddenly desperate as she exclaims that she cannot do it. The outburst catches Karen completely by surprise. She continues with urgency, insisting that Lord Carl needs Lady Karen's help now. Understanding dawns on Karen's face, replaced by a confident smile. She states that it's only natural for the eldest son of the Hamilton family to aim for the Orbis Magic Academy. She then instructs Tiana to take good care of him until she returns from her training, promising to look after him herself after that. She listens as her brother explains his predicament. He admits that he has been stuck, only able to use common magic. He theorizes that the difference between his magic and Tiana's is due to their inability to share a common image, a fundamental incompatibility he likens to the inherent differences between humans and elves. While he finds this realization helpful, Karen's expression remains clouded with concern. He continues to ponder the nature of magic itself. It isn't merely an extension of supernatural ability. It requires innate qualities, dedicated effort, and a proper environment to be learned. He recalls that even in his former world, magic and sorcery were subjects of belief, leading him to wonder if this world's system of magic developed from similar foundation, perhaps through some form of divine teaching. In this world, common magic is the most fundamental of all, a power that even the common folk can wield. She elaborates on their duty, explaining that high-ranking nobles are expected to master a tribute-based magic not for pride, but to protect their lands and people. The principle of noblesse oblige. Her expression softens as she tells him how wonderful it is to finally have a peaceful conversation like this, reminding her of their childhood. A memory surfaces of a younger Karen with her small, chubby brother. Her gentle demeanor shatters in an instant. She shouts that he is completely wrong. Using magic without a fixed image, she explains with frantic energy, causes massive mana consumption and makes the power unstable, as irrational and dangerous as the magic of a monster. His eyes widen with a sudden, chilling realization. He remembers the game. The protagonist, Kamadabu Carl, had entered the Orbis Magic Academy without an exam and controlled the heroines using spirit attribute magic, all without a fixed image. He now understood that such a power was not a gift, but monster's skill, a command tower controlling force through a fixed image. The thought that the game's version of himself attended the academy wielding such a dangerous power fills him with unease. This was the required path for Carl de Hamilton, to attend the elite Orbis Magic Academy, achieve excellent grades as proof of his nobility, and ultimately, to confess his feelings to Erica and become a man worthy of her. To do all that, he would have to pass the SS class. The thought is cut short by the sound of shattering porcelain as a vase crashes down on his head. Karen gasps, her hand flying to her mouth as she calls out his name in alarm. She leans in close to her dazed brother. She reminds him that while he possesses a sacred healing power, he was defeated by his party members time and again. She urges him to look beyond the image she holds for him and to find his very own. As she speaks, a vision of abstract shapes forms in her mind. His consciousness fractured, the world dissolving before his very eyes. The fragments swirled into a chaotic, shimmering pattern, like looking through a kaleidoscope. From the chaos, points of light began to emerge, and a thought sparked within him. Could this be it? The vision sharpened, revealing a memory of his former self lying down, observed by a man in glasses. He wondered if this was some kind of enlightenment, a glimpse into a pivotal moment in time. Snapping back to reality, he found himself face to face with Karen. He told her that her thoughts and feelings had flowed into him, and he now understood how difficult things had been for her. He apologized, admitting it was his fault. He continued, vowing to take her place and shoulder the family's burdens at the research institute. He insisted that from now on, he would protect her, urging her to live freely, like a girl her age should. His words left Karen stunned, a single tear welling in her eye. Overcome with emotion, she called out his name, her voice trembling as she began to confess something she had held back. As she spoke, the air around them began to sparkle with the same light from Carl's vision. She reached a hand out towards him, wanting to be in his arms. In that instant, the tender moment was shattered. Several sharp, dark projectiles materialized from nowhere, piercing through the air and striking her body. The assault ceased, revealing Karen standing firm, her arms spread wide. She had thrown herself in front of Carl, taking the full force of the attack meant for him. A young man is caught off guard as a woman who looks just like Lady Erica suddenly embraces him, pressing her face against his chest. He can only stammer her name in utter confusion. He finds himself holding her as she looks up, explaining that she recognized him at first glance as Lady Erica of the Borgia family. She continues, stating that she possesses something that he was not given. He remains puzzled by her words and her appearance. A sudden realization strikes him as he detects the faint scent of blood, the very same scent from another girl he once knew. Erica notices his distraction and asks what's wrong. Her demeanor suddenly shifts to one of bright, sparkling joy. She beams at him, declaring her desire to go with him to the Orbis Magic Academy and join the SS class. He is stunned into silence by her unexpected proposal. Looking away shyly for a moment, she turns back to him and confesses plainly, "It's because I like you." The scene shifts abruptly to a desolate, rocky landscape. A disembodied voice echoes in disbelief, questioning the name, Carl. The memory or vision sharpens, revealing Ira de Borgia, Erica's mother. Her face is a mask of fury as she screams that she loves the son of the Hamilton family. Below her, a woman in armor who strongly resembles Erica addresses her as mother. The armored woman responds calmly, telling Ira that she has changed. Her mind drifts back to a memory of herself as a younger girl, sitting alone in her room, a girl who could only cry after being betrayed by a man. She continues, her expression hardening with resolve as she reveals the truth to Ira. It was Carl, she explains, who took her away from that place of sorrow. The words strike Ira with the force of a physical blow. A flicker of understanding crosses her face. I see, she murmurs, if that's the case. With a grunt, she hefts a massive battle axe, preparing to strike. Nearby, a young aide cries out her name in alarm. Her path forward blocked. The commander-in-chief found her resolve questioned. The armored woman, her daughter's double, spoke with conviction, stating that if Ira was truly determined to make the boy a man of the Hamilton family, then certain conditions must be met. Ira's aide watched silently as her commander considered the ultimatum, her own determination unwavering. The armored woman then roared out her challenge, her voice echoing with defiance. If Ira wished to proceed, she would have to go through her first. Beside her, the aide maintained a stoic, unreadable expression, a silent witness to the escalating confrontation. Ira de Borgia's voice is sharp with anger as she confronts her companions. She demands to know how much they heard about her aiming for the Orbis Magic Academy, declaring that it was all for the sake of Hamilton's son. She snaps that she has no memory of raising such an impertinent daughter, prompting her aide to call out her name in concern. He bows his head apologetically, explaining that while he was with her, Lady Ira was almost never home due to her constant, distant expeditions. His words strike a nerve. Cassandra and Karen rush to her side, insisting that her upbringing of her children wasn't bad at all. Ira looks away, her anger fading into sorrow as she mutters that it's not true. She didn't raise them at all. She reflects on her absence, realizing that because she was never home, she could do nothing for Erica when she heard about the broken engagement with the prince. It was unavoidable. She thinks that Erica would never be able to trust men again. And yet, despite everything, Erica grew into a beautiful young woman and even found someone she could love again. But Ira's thoughts darken as she remembers that the person in question is none other than a member of the Hamilton family. Her expression hardens with resolve. She believes Carl is the cause of this entire situation, and that her own future must be with him. Clenching a gauntlet fist, she declares that as the head of the Borgia family, she cannot allow her daughter to be taken by the Hamiltons. Mounting her horse, she rides off, wondering what might have happened to the Hamiltons during the expedition. Her thoughts are violently interrupted as a hulking, monstrous beast lunges from the shadows, its claws extended towards her and her steed. Without hesitation, Ira levels her spear, her face a mask of grim focus. The creature lets out a deafening roar. In a blur of motion, Ira vaults from her saddle as her horse spins away to safety. She lands with perfect balance, poised to strike. She surges forward, driving the point of her spear deep into the monster's shoulder. Dark blood erupts from the wound as the beast recoils in pain. With a final, powerful thrust, she drives the spear through the creature's torso, silencing it for good. Her gaze falls upon Karen Hamilton. She declares that if Karen is truly a Borgia woman, she must prove it with her own strength. With that challenge issued, she turns to her aide, Scalon, informing him that he is next. The young man can only stammer in affirmation. Before the challenge can be met, another monstrous beast lunges from the side, its horn maw wide open. Karen recoils in surprise. The creature's roar echoes through the area. The aide calls out in concern for Lady Erica, but it is Karen whose expression hardens. She resolves that she cannot lose, not now. Her resolve is met with overwhelming force. A brutal impact sends her hurtling through the air. As she falls, Ira de Borgia steps into the fray, her massive axe poised to strike. In an instant, the battle is over. The monster's corpse tumbles from the sky. From the ground, Karen watches, a smear of blood on her face. She understands now. It is her mother's blood that flows through her veins, giving her strength. Nearby, Scalon and Duchess Cassandra watch with worried expressions. In a memory of a time past, the Borgia matriarch addresses her daughter, Erica, on a cliffside. She explains that she wants Erica to be by Carl's side, but clarifies it's not because of any arranged marriage to the Hamiltons. With a sharp gaze, she questions if Erica understands that the Hamiltons are attempting to take something from them. The memory shifts to Erica sitting with a slender, dark-haired young man, Carl's original form. She joyfully tells him that since her mother has given her approval, she will now be his girlfriend. He looks at her, taken aback, realizing that everything he has in this moment is because of her. He continues his thought, telling her that it was because of her presence that he could even conceive of living in this world as a nobleman. He looks at her earnestly, declaring that their fates are now intertwined. Following his heartfelt declaration, he leans in, and the two share a tender kiss. Their intimate moment is abruptly shattered by a brilliant, blinding flash of light that descends from above, startling them both. In another location, others witness the same strange light. Erica and a young elf girl peer out a window in alarm, while two men in uniform stare out another, questioning the source of the phenomenon. The scene cuts to the present, where a piece of paper materializes, displaying a status report. Age 14, a tribute. Spirit, skills, concentration, understanding, camouflage. Carl, now in his current, heavier body, examines the paper. He chuckles to himself, realizing he awakened his powers because of his love for Erica. He notes that his attribute is spirit, and his skills are quite different from the original story. He muses that since the game's version of him also had the spirit attribute, he could potentially do more, perhaps even use hypnosis or aphrodisiacs. He analyzes his new skills in detail. Concentration grants him photographic memory. Understanding allows him to absorb the contents of a book in mere seconds. Camouflage lets him give self-suggestions to inanimate objects. He recognizes these as incredible, cheat-like abilities, but acknowledges their potential for misuse is strictly forbidden, though he notes a wide area effect isn't necessary. The memory began with congratulations. News of his successful admission to the academy had spread quickly, becoming the talk of the nobility. It was a matter of such note that it reached the ears of the king of Eyeless himself. With this success, his father, Aaron de Hamilton, was reinstated as prime minister, bowing before his liege. Returning from a long expedition, it was the first time Aaron had seen his son's newly lean physique. He immediately sought answers, questioning his staff. He demanded to know if it was true his son had spent all his time with the Borgia girl. A servant confirmed it, explaining that it was thanks to Lady Erica that Carl had awakened his attribute, but the explanation did little to quell Aaron's rising anger. His gaze drifted to a window, where he saw the very pair walking together in the gardens below, a grim expression settling on his face. He watched them hold hands, his mind hardening with conviction. Considering the future of their two houses, he knew their parents could never approve of such a relationship. But he was not the only one watching. Elsewhere, Carl's sister, Karen, looked on with an expression of profound sorrow. From her own window, she watched them disappear into the distance. In the days before the academy began, the darkness in her heart only deepened. At the prestigious Orbis Magic Academy, a new term begins. For the pampered children of nobility, success here is the first step to success in a world governed by magical ability. A young man with dark hair stands before the gates, reflecting that for him, this is the first time he has been away from his family, the first time he must stand on his own. He is seen off by two maids from the Hamilton household, Tiana and another named Ruby. As they wish him well, he contemplates the meaning of independence, noting that for them, this is merely a boarding school for servants. As he walks the grounds with his sister, Karen, they are approached by Duchess Cassandra and Countess Elsa. Cassandra immediately voices her disdain, questioning why Karen would associate with her disgusting brother and wondering aloud if Karen will even be allowed in the dorms this year. The young man remains silent as Elsa looks on, startled by the hostility. He is taken aback by the directness of her insult. With her arms crossed, Cassandra declares that it's impossible for Karen to be so devoted to her brother. Her tirade continues, accusing Karen of not just standing with him, but praising him, an act she considers an inversion of the natural order. Elsa is shocked by the accusation. Karen, however, smiles brightly, explaining that she was only admitted to the academy thanks to her brother's sponsorship. The young man simply thinks to himself what a good sister she is. Later, inside the training building, the student body gathers in a grand hall to listen to the headmaster's opening address. After the ceremony, he overhears two students whispering nearby. They recognize him as a Hamilton, recalling his appearance at Duke Aaron's inauguration. They mock the memory, calling him the creepy, laughable figure from that party. Their gossip continues as the female student expresses surprise at how handsome he has become. The male student's attention shifts, wondering about the beautiful, red-haired girl now standing beside the Hamilton heir, noting that she wasn't at the previous social gathering. The young man's gaze also falls upon his new companion. From a distance, Johann Borgia observes them. He notes a faint resemblance between the red-haired woman and Ira, questioning if she could be a Borgia. He quickly dismisses the idea, knowing the Hamilton and Borgia families are not on friendly terms. The young Hamilton man continues on his way, keenly aware of the praise being directed at him by the prince of the Plica kingdom. Praise he feels is so undeserved it makes him want to cover his ears. His attention is then drawn to an odd sight, a boy whose rear is sticking out from his chair. He turned to his red-haired companion, declaring that no matter what insults were thrown at Kamadabu Carl, they would no longer be hurt. They were together now. From a distance, Carl's eyes widened slightly as he overheard the statement. His gaze remained fixed on the pair as they walked away. He mused internally that they moved in perfect sync, like a protagonist and a side character from a story. A flicker of recognition crossed his mind. He was certain he knew that man. This realization solidified into a firm resolution as he surveyed the sprawling academy grounds. He decided then and there that the man was someone he must avoid at all costs during his time here. Inside a classroom, a woman with glasses and a commanding presence addressed the students. She welcomed them to the SS class, introducing herself as their homeroom teacher, Norin. Carl and the other male students were immediately captivated, with one murmuring that the situation felt like it was straight out of an adult-oriented game. She began to outline the academy's curriculum, explaining that while strengthening magical abilities was a priority, the school also emphasized a broad education in liberal arts, including music, history, and literature. She mentioned a dedicated research department for new magic development and stressed a core principle. Within the academy walls, all distinctions of nationality and social status were irrelevant. Her explanation continued, detailing the academy's party system. Students would form groups within their class to complete assignments, with party members being assigned randomly. A student's final evaluation, she noted, would be based on a combination of individual grades, dual rankings, and their party's overall score. As he listened, Carl recognized every detail. It was exactly like the game he knew. He recalled the game's title, Magic Trap, and the world it presented, a world that was now beginning without the character of Carl. His mind flashed to the game's opening, which introduced the main female characters. The protagonist's childhood friend, Katrina, the third princess of the Eyeless Kingdom, Reina, and the eldest daughter of a prominent Samuran family, Naomi. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the classroom door sliding open. A young woman with long, light-colored hair stepped inside and introduced herself to the class, stating that she was Luna from the Belka Kingdom. The effect on the other students was immediate. They were utterly charmed. Carl, however, saw something more. A profile materialized in his mind, identifying her as Luna Derby, the main heroine of Magic Trap. The details were precise. The 15-year-old seventh daughter of the Derby earldom, with an aptitude for healing and betrothed to the youngest son of a neighboring noble house. This information was followed by a glimpse into her past. At the moment of her birth, her parents expressed only disappointment, having desperately hoped for a male heir after 6 daughters. This sentiment was shared by all who looked upon the newborn child, a silent condemnation that she should never have been born at all. At a marriage hunting party, she found herself the object of a nobleman's attention. He called her cute, but she knew the truth. No one expected anything from her, and her best hope was a modest marriage. The man's intentions became clear when he suggested they find a quiet place to be alone, proposing she become his lover. The proposition disgusted her. She realized that, to men of his station, she was nothing more than a disposable toy. Clenching her fists in frustration, she turned and fled. Her hasty retreat did not go unnoticed. The young protagonist watched her ascend the garden steps and called out, asking what was wrong. He approached her, his expression softening as he saw tears welling in her eyes. He gently asked her why she was crying. Listening to her unspoken sorrow, he seemed to understand completely. He acknowledged that she felt unrecognized by anyone, then quietly added that he was the same. He elaborated on his own circumstances, explaining that as the third son, he was overshadowed by his older brothers who held all the rank and fortune. He confessed that he had nothing and, because of it, received no respect from anyone. With his back to her, he made a quiet vow. Because of his situation, he knew he had to become strong. It was the only way. He turned back to face her, his eyes burning with a newfound resolve as he clenched his fist. He declared that everything would be fine. He just needed to blow away everyone who denied him. Within the world of the game Magi Tran, the protagonist, Bell Richmond, makes a declaration. He vows to achieve victory, rebuild the country, and become a hero, asking for everyone's support. Carl recalls this scene, remembering how, from the perspective of an unpopular man, he had to endure the protagonist's many blessings and romantic successes. When he considers his current situation calmly, however, it is a stark contrast. He finds himself surrounded by beautiful women, including Luna, who are all being affectionate with him, even as he acknowledges he already has a girlfriend named Luna. And so, he remembers his past self, the unattractive Carl who was deceived by these same beautiful women, ensnared by their demonic wiles and wicked magic. The one who ultimately punished that version of Carl was Bell. Yet, it wasn't for the sake of justice. Bell acted because he could not bear to have his woman stolen from him. He did it because he himself wanted to be the hero. As Bell stands triumphantly before a crowd, a young woman steps forward from the onlookers, announcing herself as Erica of the Borgia family. Her appearance sends a ripple through the crowd. They recognize Lady Erica, whispering that she is the goddess of the Eyeless army. Carl watches the scene unfold, his thoughts fixed on Bell. His mind flashes back to a piece of history. The small Belka kingdom was defeated by the Eyeless kingdom, and during that conflict, Bell's older brother was killed by the forces of Ira's army. His recollection is shattered when a voice calls out, "Next is Carl." Startled, Carl turns to see Prince Libera addressing him. The crowd parts before him, creating a path. Luna looks on, concerned, whispering Bell's name. He stares ahead, his eyes narrowing as a single thought forms in his mind. Is this a challenge? But the prince's words suggest something else entirely. He asks if Carl will take his hand, explaining that in order to live a slow life in this world, it is best not to make waves. As Carl stands in the grand hall, Luna Derby's voice calls out his name. He turns his head slightly, his expression serious, to see her standing just behind him. She begins to apologize for Bell's rudeness from before. Her words trigger a sharp flashback for Carl, a memory of an earlier encounter involving both Bell and Luna, solidifying his resolve. His eyes narrow with cold intent. He decides internally that the best course of action is to simply ignore Bell, to avoid getting involved with him at all costs. Following this decision, he turns his back on Luna, preparing to walk away without another word. She seems startled by the sudden dismissal. As she takes a step toward him, she suddenly loses her footing. Carl pivots instantly, catching her securely in his arms as she falls forward. He holds her steady, his expression unchanged. He thanks her for her concern, but tells her they must simply act normally, not as enemies, but not as friends either. Just normally. Looking down at her, his voice remains low and intense. He warns her not to get entangled with him, explaining that it is to prevent her from being dragged in by the game's corrective forces. Princess Reina reflects on the men she has encountered. They all seem to be the same, either fawning over her or openly expressing their desire to possess her. Suddenly, Belle Richmond grabs her shoulders, his voice intense. He declares that she must be his, warning her away from Carl. Reina is stunned by the forwardness of his actions, a first for her. He then turns and walks away, leaving her standing alone and speechless in a long, arched corridor. She watches him depart, his words still hanging in the air. Elsewhere, the servant Tiana hurries through the grounds towards the servants' quarters, a basket in her arms and a look of determination on her face. Finding a secluded spot, she raises a thin, ornate wand. It begins to glow as she channels her energy into it, practicing in secret. At that same time, Princess Reina steps out into the night. She gazes up at the beautiful full moon, feeling a sense of liberation at being outside without an attendant. Her quiet moment is interrupted by a strange sight. She sees Tiana nearby, her wand conjuring shimmering bubbles of water that float through the air. Reina's expression shifts to one of surprise. She approaches the servant, startling her. Reina remarks that it's a beautiful display, but immediately questions why Tiana is out practicing so late at night. As they stand face to face, Reina's gaze fixes on Tiana's eyes. She recognizes their distinct purple hue and comes to a sudden realization. Tiana is a half-elf, just like her. She wonders if the servant is also hiding her identity from everyone. Connecting the dots, Reina asks directly if Tiana is Carl's maid and if she is performing some secret task on his orders. Flustered, Tiana quickly denies it, insisting that Lord Carl would never ask for such a thing. She listened as Tiana began her story, explaining that the Hamilton family had never given her special treatment for being a half-elf. From a young age, she had always been a lowly servant. Tiana recalls another maid harshly scolding her, telling her to eat later, away from everyone else. Her memories continued, recalling a time when Duke Hamilton told her that if she couldn't even work to earn her wages, she would have to be given a job that suited her. A veiled threat that left the young Tiana kneeling in distress. She remembered the cold, walking barefoot through the snow, a small, lonely figure in the vast, wintry grounds of the estate. It was then that Duke Hamilton approached her, noting that she was close in age to his own son and must have noticed certain things. He formally introduced himself, confirming her name was Tiana and acknowledging her pointed ears without judgment before welcoming her properly. Soon after, she met a young Carl for the first time. He reached out a small hand towards her, a gentle smile on his face as he called her cute, leaving Tiana wide-eyed with surprise. Back in the present, at a party in the royal palace, Tiana concluded her story with a faint smile. She confirmed to Reina that she had known Carl since that time, solidifying the reason for her loyalty. Her attention then shifted across the hall, where she and another young noblewoman, Luna, spotted Carl squatting alone by a window. Luna identified him as a Hamilton, and as Reina started to call out to him, Luna quickly stopped her, insisting it was a bad idea. She turned to Reina with a stern expression, warning her that it is forbidden for a member of the royal family to associate with such a deformed person, telling her not to get close to that thing. Across the room, Carl remained isolated, the subject of cruel whispers from the other nobles who deemed the hideous creature unworthy of being in their presence. From her vantage point, Reina observed the third prince, Labura, engaged with another woman. Her companion, Luna Derby, broke the silence, asking if Reina found Carl hideous. Before Reina could answer, Luna offered her own opinion, that a man who would betray his fiancée, like the prince, was far more repulsive. She then turned the conversation to Lady Erica, mentioning that she had apparently been confined to her estate for a long time. Luna expressed her relief, noting how cheerful Erica appeared to be now. Elsewhere, a servant with pointed ears and a gentle smile addressed a young lady. The servant tentatively asked if it was possible that Lady Erica and Carl were dating, and then, with a happy confirmation, affirmed that they were. The pieces suddenly clicked into place for Reina. A memory surfaced. Lady Erica holding a distinctive unicorn wand, a brief glimpse of Carl nearby. A quiet understanding settled over her. It all made sense now. Under a full moon, Lady Erica sits on a bench beside another young woman. The woman remarks on a beautiful unicorn sculpture nearby, wondering where it was made. Erica replies that it seems to have been there since she was born, but that the unicorn is like... The scene dissolves into a distorted memory. The bloated face of Carl sneers, his thoughts filled with malice. He thinks about how Belle is being promiscuous with other girls, and because of that, in a nightmarish vision, his former, heavier self pins a woman down, his hand gripping her chin. He tells her that he will fill the void in her heart with his mental magic. With a gasp, a young man with dark hair jolts awake in his bed, sweat beading on his brow. The nightmare's intensity causes him to clench his fist, snapping a fan he was holding. He sits up, pondering the dream he just had. He can't understand why he would see such a thing, recognizing his former, overweight self. He knows that in the society of nobles, a person like that has no place, and yet he recalls an image of Luna being drawn to him. His thoughts darken with possessiveness. He worries that if things continue, another man will surely take Luna, his woman, from him, picturing her surrounded by other suitors. The memory fades, giving way to the present day inside an academy hall. Norin, a teacher, addresses the students, announcing that today is the day the party members will be revealed. She explains that the selections were made at random and that the assigned members will operate as a unit for the entire year. The first two names are called Carl, now appearing as a slim young man, and Erica. Their student details are displayed, showing Carl ranked 9th and Erica 10th. Immediately after, Reina is announced as the next member, ranked 3rd. Overjoyed, she rushes to Carl and embraces him, exclaiming how happy she is that they're in the same party. Norin watches them with a knowing smile. He watches Erica and Reina hold hands, a new alliance formed. He internally assesses his team, himself as the strategist, complemented by the power of Erica and Reina. He deems a good balance. His thoughts then drift to Luna, who observes them from a distance. He stares intently at Luna Derby, who nervously offers a greeting. His expression is dark and unreadable. His mind races, recalling the original story's plot. He remembers that in the game, the protagonist and Luna would be isolated together in a camp, a perfect setup for romance. He resolves that he will not allow such a scenario to unfold, reminding himself that he already has a girlfriend, Erica. This thought propels him forward in a sudden, determined blur of motion. He comes to a halt directly in front of another young man, his eyes narrowed. He speaks the name with quiet intensity. Bell. The response is immediate. A sharp slap cracks across his face. He recovers instantly, his shock turning to fury. Pointing directly at Bell, he bellows a challenge for a duel. Bell looks on, utterly baffled, while the crowd murmurs about the Academy's rules. A higher-ranked student cannot refuse a challenge from a lower-ranked one, and victory means their ranks are swapped. Bell calmly addresses him, noting their respective positions. He is ranked 9th, while Carl is 32nd. Because of this, Bell explains, he cannot refuse the challenge. He then questions Carl's motives, stating that he had only wished for a peaceful school life, and asks why he is being challenged. Carl dismisses the question entirely, shouting that he owes Bell no such courtesy. Bell's expression hardens at the belligerent response. Suddenly, Luna rushes between them, her hands raised in a desperate plea. She begs them not to fight for her sake. Bell turns away with a sigh, crossing his arms. He scoffs internally at the situation, wondering why someone who speaks of rebuilding the country and becoming a hero would challenge him over such a trivial matter. The entire confrontation seems utterly nonsensical to him. He looks down at the challenger, Carl, who seems to have a fleeting moment of internal conflict. Carl considers that the situation could have been handled more peacefully, but quickly dismisses the thought, verbally agreeing to go through with it. Bell, observing this exchange, is left to wonder what exactly is unfolding before him. His expression shifts to one of weary resignation. He addresses Carl directly, remarking sardonically on this little game of justice. In this scenario, he notes with a cynical air, he has been cast in the role of the villain. In this world, there is a law of justice. Where there is good, evil must also exist as its natural counterpart. At a table, Johann Borgia explains to Lady Erica that the game Magic Trap began without a villain. Overhearing this, Carl realizes with a sly smile that for the game to proceed, someone must step into that role. He continues, describing the protagonist Bell's destiny, to aim for the throne, fight the strong, and bear the weight of a small country, having been born weak with nothing to lose. Johann then turns to Carl, taunting him for provoking Bell. Lady Erica chimes in, annoyed, pointing out that Carl isn't acting like himself, and that his actions mean her cursed doll can no longer be sold. Johann reflects that he is no longer suited for the villain role now that he has lost his creepy, fluffy element, something he swore never to return to. He grows increasingly irritated, realizing that the more Carl interacts with Bell, the more seeds of malice are sown, forcing events to align with the game's original, rigid settings. In a symbolic vision, a slim, dark-haired figure holds a blade to Carl's throat. It is understood that to be freed from the game's curse, a decisive act is necessary. In this internal struggle, Carl's own hand closes around the throat of the symbolic protagonist. He comes to a stark conclusion. He must erase the main character to survive. The scene shifts to a grand, stone coliseum, its sign clearly marking it as the dueling ground. Inside the arena, two figures stand ready. They are identified as Bell Richmond, ranked 22nd, and a transformed, slim Carl de Hamilton, ranked 9th. From his stands, their teacher Norin explains the simple rule of the duel to Luna and Reina. One must only force the opponent to submit. The duel commences. With a look of intense focus, Carl lunges forward in a blur of motion. As he charges, a large chunk of rock hurtles toward him, launched from Bell's position. Bell's hand is surrounded by shattered fragments. From the audience, Luna cries out in astonishment that Bell's fist has become like stone. He narrows his eyes, his focus absolute. As he observed his opponent, a torrent of information flooded his senses. He perceived Bell Richmond's vital signs, height, weight, pulse, even blood pressure, and identified his elemental attribute as earth. Simultaneously, an instantaneous analysis of the rock composition appeared in his mind, detailing its mineral makeup. This influx of data led to a swift conclusion. He understood. He had already seen through the coming attack. He knew precisely how Bell would move. The sequence of actions laid bare before him, as if he were watching a pre-recorded event. Just as predicted, Bell lunged forward, his foot shattering the ground and sending a spray of rock shards toward Carl. With an almost casual sidestep, Carl dodged the attack completely. The assault continued, with another of Bell's rock projectiles smashing harmlessly against a stone wall. The onlookers murmured amongst themselves, realizing that Carl was evading every single attack. seemingly predicting his opponent's every move. Frustrated, Bell changed his tactics, leaping high into the air to launch an attack from above, summoning jagged rocks to rain down on his target. But the change in strategy was futile. In an instant, Carl closed the distance, appearing behind Bell and striking him down. The crowd gasped in shock. Lady Erica and Cassandra stared, remarking that Carl was incredible, completely overwhelming his opponent. Standing over the fallen protagonist, Carl issued a simple command: stay down for 10 seconds. On the ground, Bell Richmond coughs up blood but shouts with defiance that he will absolutely not fall. From a distance, Carl the Hamilton watches with grim determination, while Lady Erica looks on with deep concern, whispering Bell's name. He kneels, gripping a small rod as magical energy begins to swirl. Closing his eyes, he calls out, "Spirits of the earth, answer my call." In response to his plea, the stone ground cracks and bursts open. Two onlookers gasp, one of them identifying the small, emerging figures as mini-golems. 5 of the stone creatures now stand around Carl. He reflects that analyzing 6 targets at once is a difficult task, then points forward and issues a command. Go. This time for Carl. He thrusts his finger forward, shouting the final command: possess. A golem lunges, seemingly towards Lady Erica, who watches its approach. Suddenly, Carl's eyes widen in surprise. A golem darts past him, moving with unexpected speed and in an unforeseen direction. The reason for his shock becomes clear as 4 of the mini-golems ignore their intended target and instead converge on Bell, surrounding him completely. As Carl watches in horror, a young woman screams that the mini-golems are attacking Bell. One of the stone creatures stomps down, crushing Bell's foot beneath its weight. Bell cries out, turning a pained and furious gaze on Carl. "What have you done?" he demands. Stunned, Carl can only stammer Bell's name in response. Observing from the crowd, a woman with glasses named Katrina explains that Carl used a possession technique. She notes that if Bell resists, he'll be crushed. Her companion, Naomi, adds that a summoned monster like a mini-golem has no ego to resist. The terrible realization dawns on Carl. The golems are his puppets, and he is the one hurting Bell. He watches in horror as the rock golems, his own creations, bear down on Bell. Bell looks from the falling rocks to Carl, a spark of realization in his eyes. He curses, demanding to know if Carl intends to crush him with his own fists. Thrown back by the magical assault, Bell grits his teeth. He understands now that the creatures were summoned to defeat him, and he roars that it is Carl who should be the one to fall. With a cry of alarm, he throws his arms up to shield his head as the barrage of enchanted stones rains down upon him. He crashes onto the stone courtyard below. From a balcony high above, Lady Erica, witnessing the brutal conclusion, calls out Carl's name with urgency. As the dust settles, Carl is held by Cassandra. He reflects internally that the difference in their power was obvious from the beginning, and that he never should have subjected Bell to such a public humiliation. The surrounding crowd murmurs amongst themselves, finding nothing strange about the outcome. They comment that it's only natural for someone to be defeated when facing an opponent with Carl's level of malice. Sometime later, as an unconscious Bell is carried away on a stretcher, Lady Erica approaches Carl. She tells him that had he held back, it might have been a greater disgrace for Bell. Walking beside him, she continues her thought, stating that if Bell should ever stray from the proper path, Carl will be there to handle it. She turns to him, suggesting it's fine to let things get messy again. Carl quietly agrees, thinking to himself that this pragmatic, almost ruthless side of Erica is precisely what he likes about her. In the infirmary, a young man was recovering. Bell, the original protagonist of Magi Tra, lay in bed, lamenting how pathetic he was, not even coming close to Carl's level. His girlfriend Luna, the game's heroine, tried to reassure him, but Bell continued, pointing out that Carl was not only stronger but also taller and more handsome, which left her speechless. Noticing her silence, Bell wryly asked if she wasn't going to deny that part. Luna then addressed Bell, preparing to question his actions. She asked if he had really challenged Carl to a duel for such a petty reason as jealousy, and he remained silent. Bell then admitted that he couldn't control himself from the moment he saw Carl. He explained that terrible images had flooded his mind simply because she had ended up in the same party as Carl. Luna reeled, visibly shocked. With a sharp retort, she asked if he really thought she was so fickle. Bell just listened with a serious expression. Luna pressed on, questioning if their relationship was that shallow, prompting Bell to cry out that it wasn't. He then apologized, admitting that he should have trusted her. Bell continued, saying the incident had made him realize something important. He reflected on his duty to restore his family and the Belka kingdom, yet felt completely powerless in front of Carl. This power difference, he felt, was just like the one between the Eyeless Kingdom and the Belka Kingdom. Luna began to argue that it wasn't like that at all, but she then shifted her tone, stating that this was something they should have known from the very beginning. Luna pragmatically reminded him that Carl is the son of the Prime Minister, and his girlfriend Erica is the daughter of the Blood War princess who destroyed Belka's army. She declared that they were on a completely different level and questioned the point of trying to compete with such people. Bell could only stammer in agreement, admitting that she was right. Luna continued her strategic lesson, explaining that while good grades are important, this elite academy is primarily a place to build connections with other nobles. She argued that the best way to contribute to the Belka kingdom was to befriend everyone and create a network with the eyeless kingdom's royalty and high nobility. Bel could only stare, taken aback by her strategic thinking. He realized with admiration that Luna was looking much further into the future than he was. Finally, he told her that he understood. Meanwhile, as Carl looked upon a grand mansion, he resolved to properly apologize to the original Carl. Elsewhere, Tenochtitlan was suddenly enveloped in a brilliant magical light. The light took the form of swirling bubbles of water. Lady Erica is amazed, exclaiming how incredible Tenochtitlan is. Karen Hamilton marvels that she can clean a person's entire body in seconds without them undressing. Tenochtitlan explains it's a composite of water and tornado magic. Carl adds that Tenochtitlan developed the spell for him because their shared washroom made mornings difficult, noting it even cleans his teeth. Lady Erica realizes that Tenochtitlan's magic, including her domestic skills, can greatly enrich people's lives. This gives her an idea. If they could create a magical tool using Tenochtitlan's spells, it could help maids all over the world. Carl considers this, musing that creating a magic tool would make the spell usable by anyone and could spark an industrial revolution, a term that confuses Lady Erica. However, Lady Erica starts to raise an objection. Tenochtitlan then reveals that she is half-elf. Carl immediately understands the problem. Human and elven magic have different structures, making it difficult to create a single magical circuit. Lady Erica concludes that this makes Tenochtitlan's magic truly one of a kind. Lady Erica murmurs that Tenochtitlan's power might be immeasurable. She looks on with a deeply thoughtful expression. A flashback reveals Tenochtitlan's painful past. Her foster parents never told her about her real ones. She was ostracized by elves, and then shunned by humans at her first job. But now, she reflects, her power, neither human nor elven, is being used in such a positive way. She declares that her true happiness is being by Carl's side and serving him and his family. Tenochtitlan vows that her power has always been, and will always be, for Carl's sake. She walks on with quiet determination. As she stands with Carl and Karen, her gaze is fixed on him. The scene returns to the exterior of the grand mansion. Later, Lady Erica brings up Carl's unique skills, concentration, and understanding. She asks if this means he can instantly memorize a whole textbook, questioning if he even needs to study anymore. Carl admits that while he can indeed memorize every page, even the simplest text can have multiple interpretations. He explains that the real value of the academy is learning from the experience and knowledge of its excellent teachers, a sentiment that impresses Norin. He then begins to add that it's not just the teachers who make it worthwhile. He adds that he can also learn from Erica, whose combat prowess is so great he couldn't match it in 100 years, and from all his other peers as well. He elaborates that each person has a unique, unbeatable strength, and that they all cooperate and compete within their party. This mutual development, he concludes, is what true learning is all about. Impressed, Karen Hamilton remarks that this is just what she'd expect from Carl. Watching him, Belle reflects that Carl is also an excellent person. This leads him to question the dream he had, wondering if it was merely a product of his own insecurity and self-doubt. He reassures himself that a respectable man like Carl would never try to steal Luna from him. Having made up his mind, Belle calls out to Carl as he walks down a hallway. Belle approaches Carl, stating that he wants to apologize properly. Carl stops and turns to face him. He looks at Belle with a serious expression. Belle then admits that he was a complete fool for glaring at Carl when they first met, and then suddenly challenging him to a duel. Carl acknowledges this, noting that Belle is at least aware that he was the one who started their feud. He asks what Belle wants now, and Belle hesitantly asks for forgiveness. Belle then declares that he wants to get along with Carl and become his friend. He continues to praise Carl, calling him cool and smart. Meanwhile, Carl internally recalls a thought from the original game's villain. The outcome was decided from the start, like the power dynamic between the eyeless and Belka kingdoms. Belle, unaware, earnestly proposes that they become friends and learn from each other to improve their nations, just as Carl had suggested. Carl thinks to himself that if he simply ends their rivalry here, then no one has to play the part of the villain. But instead, Carl coldly tells Belle to get lost. Belle is stunned into silence. Carl scoffs at the idea of being friends, telling Belle he's being too familiar. He declares that he finds Belle unpleasant and warns him to never get involved with him again, though an internal thought suggests he has a specific strategy in mind. He mused that while men who fight often become friends, he was deliberately creating friction instead. The other young man simply stared back at him, his expression unreadable. His gaze then hardened with intensity. Finally, the young man relented, stating that he had just one thing to say. He then warned Carl to stay away from Luna. As Carl turned and walked away, he remained silent. He then wondered if his own reason was failing to control his feelings about his relationship with Belle. He worried that even if he managed to avoid his fate as a villain, the protagonist might fall to darkness instead, leading to the same outcome where Carl is killed. Still, Carl continued to ponder the situation. The other man's warning to stay away from Luna echoed in his mind. He scoffed inwardly at the man's foolishness, certain that with Erica by his side, he would never be interested in another girl. However, he had to admit there was some cause for concern. A brief fantasy of being in a harem state with Luna, Erica, and Reina made him concede that his environment was indeed worrying. Carl narrated that he and his group were on a mission from the academy, heading towards a level 15 dungeon. Their objective was to conquer the dungeon by defeating the goblins that were disrupting the mountain's ecosystem, a real battle rather than a mere training exercise. A close-up on a goblin's face emphasized the grim reality that they had to fight these creatures. A fellow student confidently stated that since a dungeon appraiser had assessed the area, they should be able to clear it without issue. Carl nervously mentioned to Erica that goblins eat humans, and that while her level 20 was reassuring, his own level 5 was not, to which she simply agreed. The situation was precarious, as these noble children, who had never even boiled water for themselves, were now expected to survive on their own. Despite the danger and lack of direct supervision, with only a magical surveillance bird watching them, Erica confidently promised to protect Carl. Gazing into the distance, Carl reflected on his past assumption that being a noble was just about socializing, now seeing this danger as the price for his luxurious life. He considered the possibility that risking his life to protect the territory was part of his duty. As he and his companions looked out over the vast landscape, he sighed, realizing this was a far cry from the slow life he had envisioned. Carl recalled that in movies, the outdoor activities of upper-class boarding school students were always depicted as elegant affairs. He had imagined a picnic lunch set up by servants for girls in white dresses, a scene he found quintessentially aristocratic. But the reality was far different. While Erica compared it to a field trip, Reina wondered if a snake was edible, and Luna fetched water. Carl realized this was less a picnic and more like survival training. Despite the ruggedness, Erica commented on how convenient their situation was. This was because Carl had used his possession ability to make a carpet carry all of their camping gear for them. Reina then pointed out that Carl's contributions didn't end there, bringing up their recent encounter with goblins. She recounted how Erica, a close combat specialist, led a frontal attack while Reina's thunderbolt stopped any who tried to flee, allowing Erica to finish them off. Luna added that she healed Erica afterward, leading Reina to realize that the entire successful battle was according to Carl's plan. Reina praised how Carl had perfectly predicted the goblins' movements, and Erica agreed, saying they had simply moved as he instructed. Carl humbly deflected the praise, insisting that they were the ones who used their powers, and that he himself couldn't have defeated a single goblin. Watching him, Luna reflected on their excellent teamwork, feeling genuinely glad that she had joined this party. However, her thought trailed off with a but, hinting at some underlying concern. As she wondered what Belle was doing, a massive creature was struck down in a powerful blow. The scene cut to Naomi Dalu, the 5th-ranked, level 14 duelist, unleashing her swallow reversal technique. Her attack sent a goblin reeling backward. The force of the impact was devastating. Watching the battle was Katrina de Orleans. A caption identified her as the top-ranked duelist in the Machina Empire at level 19. She began to cast a spell, commanding a wall to rise. The book in her hands began to glow with immense power. Nearby, another member of their party, a man with glasses, prepared his own spell. He then unleashed a powerful explosion. The blast wave swept over a group of unsuspecting goblins. The magic detonated with fiery force. As the smoke cleared, Reina dashed forward with incredible speed. Watching her, Naomi remarked on her impressive skill, befitting the number 1 ranked combat. Katrina, however, noted that the magical tool she was working on still needed improvement, though she admitted the other's sword skills were quite good. She then began to draw a contrast. Elsewhere, A male student cheered that they had successfully defeated over 30 goblins. However, Kana pointed out that it was only because he had led the goblins straight to them, leaving the boy speechless. He looked down in shame. The party had been fighting in a rocky, barren area. Later, they set up a campfire to rest. The same student tried to contribute, proudly announcing that they had a tent for camping and plenty of food from a boar. But he was quickly corrected. Naomi reminded him that Kana brought the tent, and Kana added that Naomi was the one who hunted the boar. Flustered, the student stammered that he would handle the cooking then. Naomi seemed hesitant to let him, trailing off uncertainly. Night fell, with a full moon shining in the sky. As the group sat by the fire, Kana mentioned that the other boy had gone to gather wild vegetables, and another student suggested they start eating without him. Katerina then turned her attention to Naomi. She asked directly if Naomi had actually wanted to be in the same party as Erika. Naomi was startled by the sudden question. She stammered that it was simply a matter of respect between fellow warriors. Changing the subject, one of the male students began gushing about Erika's mother, the renowned Ira de Borgia, commander-in-chief of the Allied forces and a role model for the daughter of a Machina Empire general. Another boy added that she had remained a widow for a long time without any romantic rumors, prompting Naomi to exclaim that her integrity was also magnificent. A voice mused that if her daughter Erika was so beautiful, Ira herself must be even more so. Caught up in the fantasy, Naomi imagined how incredible Ira must be and confessed she would love to meet her just once. She then shifted the topic to Kana, asking about her interests and recalling that she'd been interested in Carl's Hamilton family. Katana confirmed that she was, in fact, interested in the Hamilton family. She specified that her admiration was for Aaron, the Prime Minister of the Eyeless Kingdom. Another noble chimed in, noting that his country was modeling its administrative system on the one devised by Lord Aaron. Nearby, Norin mused that she couldn't stand talking to such empty-headed nobles, even as Johann Borgia tried to ask her on a date. She wished she could discuss a reign of intellect with someone like Lord Aaron, a sentiment with which Naomi agreed. Norin then thought of his son, Carl, finding his use of physical attacks strange for someone with a mental attribute. Elsewhere, a voice expressed a deep desire to become friends with Carl and Erika. Luna walked alone, a thoughtful expression on her face. Meanwhile, as Carl's group walked through the woods, Reina thought she heard something. Suddenly, a shout of Belle made Luna gasp in surprise. Looking up, Carl, Reina, and Luna saw Belle appear on the path ahead. He was running towards them with a look of sheer panic on his face. The reason for his terror became clear. A massive monster was chasing him. Belle continued to flee for his life from the enormous beast. Seeing him in danger, Luna cried out his name and reached for him. However, Carl stopped her, warning her not to be rash and pointing out what Belle had brought with him. He identified the creature as a boss goblin. As the goblin charged, Erika leaped forward to intercept it, sword drawn. Carl shouted her name as she engaged the enemy. Erika noted that this foe was much tougher than the grunts they had faced earlier. Meanwhile, Carl cast a spell, creating a protective barrier. Erika shouted that she would handle the boss goblin, and Carl watched her, determined. Taking command, he told Luna to use the opportunity to heal Belle, and she quickly agreed. Luna rushed to Belle's side and began casting her healing magic. Carl then instructed Reina to protect both of them while they were vulnerable. The boss goblin took the opportunity to strike, its shadowy claws descending upon Erika. Watching from the side, Carl noted her level 20 status, reasoning that in a level 15 dungeon, the boss should logically be weaker. Despite his logic, Erika was shocked by the goblin's power, realizing it was far stronger than she had anticipated. A massive hand swung down towards her. The force of the blow sent Erika flying backwards. Seeing her fall, Carl cried out her name in alarm. As he reached out, he uttered the word for a possession spell. A hulking goblin loomed over them. Carl rushed to Erika's side, asking if she was all right. She admitted that she had underestimated their foe. But with renewed determination, Erika declared that in her current state, she could definitely win. As she prepared to fight, Carl lamented that with his view blocked, he couldn't provide any support. Suddenly, a brilliant pillar of light erupted around Erika. A hand reached out from within the dazzling light. Carl looked up in astonishment at the unexpected phenomenon. When the light subsided, he saw a familiar face and called out Katrina's name. Katrina had arrived with another companion, Naomi, surprising Erika. Katrina smiled, acknowledging Naomi's presence as well. Naomi expressed her joy at getting to fight alongside Erika, who happily agreed, but Katrina's voice cut in with a note of caution. She found it strange that the level 20 Erika was struggling so much, questioning if the dungeon was truly level 15, and decided to use her monster appraisal skill. Katrina raised her appraisal tool to her eye. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she realized the truth about their opponent. She shouted in shock that the goblin was actually level 30. At Orbis Magic Academy, Norin-sensei looked into a scrying mirror, sensing something was amiss. She realized the surveillance wasn't tracking the SS class students and decided to investigate in person. Just then, her younger sister Louise, a royal accountant, burst in, shouting that something terrible was happening. Louise frantically explained that at this rate, Prime Minister Aaron Hamilton was going to storm the Borgia family estate. The scene flashed back to a few days prior, where Prime Minister Aaron Hamilton was examining an annual report with disgust. He furiously questioned how the taxes from the Borgia family's vast lands could possibly amount to such a small sum. He then demanded to know why this discrepancy had been ignored for so long. An aide nervously explained that the busy Lady Ira had delegated asset management to a local merchant, and there had been no issues before. Aaron repeated the phrase, "no issues," with seething disbelief. At the Hamilton estate, his roar echoed, declaring the Borgia's tax evasion over the past decades was on the scale of the national treasury. The Grand Hamilton family mansion stood under the weight of its master's fury. Back in the present, maids noted that Lady Karen, who returned home every weekend, was still secluded in her room. Inside, Karen felt a familiar, sinister aura emanating from elsewhere in the house. A knock came at her door as a maid nervously called her name, startling her. The maid then asked for instructions on what to do. A spread of tea and cakes had been prepared for a guest. Moments later, Karen found herself sitting opposite a male visitor, sharing tea. She was internally flustered, realizing she was alone with a man who wasn't a family member. Her guest, Johann de Borgia, apologized for the intrusion, admitting he should have checked if her father was home. Karen recognized him as Erica's older brother. Karen explained that her father was often out and offered to relay a message for him. Johann then revealed the purpose of his visit. The Borgia family had received notice of an audit. The two sat opposite each other, the tension of their family's rivalry hanging in the air. Johann confessed that with his mother on an expedition, he was lost, as neither of them were good with numbers. Karen recalled hearing that the Borgia family was filled with brawn, not brains. He had come to her hoping for advice on how his family should prepare for the audit. Karen found the situation strange, remarking that the Hamilton and Borgia families were known to be bitter rivals, and she never expected to meet one of them face to face. He explained that their two neutral families were the only thing keeping the opposing royalist and aristocrat factions in check, lamenting that they should have been allies. He mused that their falling out was due to differing values, and perhaps even manipulation by the aristocrat faction. But then, he added, Lord Karl appeared. Johann acknowledged that Karl had single-handedly severed the long-standing feud between their families, trailing off as he thought about the boy. Johann recalled how Karl had suddenly appeared one day and freed Erica from her imprisonment. Lady Karen listened, somewhat taken aback. Erica enthusiastically agreed, declaring that Lord Karl was a wonderful person. However, Lady Karen began to say that Lord Johann was able to change, with Erica adding that it was because she was with him. Lady Karen reflected that Erica was indeed worthy of Lord Johann, and the one who should be by his side. Hearing this, Prince Laburo wondered where that left him. Far away, the group was stranded in a desolate, mountainous region. Elsewhere, Karl's half-elf maid, Tiana, learned with shock that the entire SS class group had gone missing, including Lord Karl and Lady Erica. Scalan, the butler, confirmed the mission was supposed to have ended the day before and that the teachers were now mounting a search party. Tiana cried out Karl's name in worry. She despaired, feeling that with her current power, she was too far away to do anything to help him. The scene then shifted to a vast and desolate mountain range, emphasizing the great distance between them. In that wilderness, Karl noted that lesser goblins were beginning to gather around them. He quickly assessed their dire situation. With one person sent for help and Reina protecting Belle and Luna, only 4 of them remained as combatants. Karl realized that a single mistake could lead to someone's death, or even a total party wipe. He grimly accepted that while Magitra had been a game, this new world was real and offered no resets. Taking charge, Karl turned to his companions and asked if they would follow his instructions. The women, including Katrina and Naomi, looked on with tense anticipation. Meanwhile, the fearsome level 30 boss goblin let out a deafening roar. With their decision made, Naomi and Erica leaped in to attack the massive boss goblin. Katrina, meanwhile, held back the smaller goblins, keeping them at bay. From the sidelines, Carl issued his orders. Don't aim for a fatal blow, just wear down the boss goblin's stamina, and keep the smaller goblins separate. With his plan in motion, Carl prepared for the next phase. He closed his eyes to focus his concentration. As he did, Erica and Naomi continued their desperate fight against the boss goblin. Katrina realized Carl was analyzing Erica and Naomi's movements, but she grew worried. She shouted to Carl that her magical wall wouldn't hold for much longer. Carl noted that Erica and Naomi were also reaching their limits. Simultaneously, he saw that the boss goblin's movements had begun to slow. Declaring that the time was now, Carl's eyes snapped open as he cast his possession spell. As Katrina stumbled back, exhausted, Carl caught her. Suddenly, the horde of smaller goblins began to swarm the boss goblin. The giant monster was quickly overwhelmed by its own kind. Carl's plan was revealed. He had made the goblins learn Erica and Naomi's fighting style. He had gambled that with so many of them attacking, they would succeed. The boss goblin roared in agony as it was torn apart by the smaller goblins. Suddenly, however, one of the small goblins froze mid-attack. Erica cried out that something was wrong, and Carl feared the worst. As the other goblins stopped, looking confused, Carl realized his possession spell had worn off. He had no magic left to cast another spell, and both Erica and Naomi were still recovering their strength. Making the situation even more agonizing, the boss goblin was clearly on its last legs, just one hit away from defeat. All they could do was watch in frustration, knowing victory was within their grasp, but unable to land the final blow. Just then, the sound of someone running barefoot at high speed echoed through the woods. The runner revealed himself to be Bell, who cheerfully announced that he had arrived to help everyone. With a surge of confidence, he told the party to leave the rest to him. Bell immediately raised his hand, magically gathering rocks and debris from the ground. With a determined expression, he focused his power for the incoming strike. He then charged forward, closing the distance to the goblin in an instant. Bell stood defiantly before the towering boss goblin, surrounded by a vortex of magical energy. He unleashed his attack, creating a massive explosion of force upon impact. Watching the incredible display of power, Carl looked on in stunned silence. He wryly identified the phenomenon as the protagonist's plot armor. At the Borgia family estate, Lutz, a steward dispatched from the Hamilton family, began to speak. She reported that their financial records from the past few years showed deviations from tax standards, including underreported income and hidden assets, strongly suggesting tax evasion. Ira de Borgia, the head of the house, acknowledged that she understood the situation and decided on her first course of action. Instead of addressing the audit, she cheerfully called for Johann to have a mock battle, prompting a worried Lutz to consider contacting Lord Aaron. Iris suddenly lunged forward, drawing a weapon from its sheath. With a determined expression, she swung the weapon directly at Lutz. The weapon struck Lutz squarely in the stomach. Lutz looked down in shock at the point of impact. However, the weapon was revealed to be a harmless staff with a fluffy tip. Suddenly, Ira was startled to see someone and exclaimed, "Aaron!" She angrily demanded to know how he dared to set foot in her territory. In response, Aaron simply told her that she stank. Ira was taken aback by his unexpected comment. She realized he was referring to the smell of blood, which she was constantly covered in. Ira declared she was proud of the smell as a consequence of defending the country, but Aaron clarified that wasn't what he meant. In an instant, her armor was replaced with an elegant dress, leaving the onlookers in awe as she stood clean beside Aaron. Johann Borgia expressed his astonishment that any man would dare call his mother stinky, while a butler marveled that Ira had actually obeyed. Moments later, Aaron took a sip of tea and declared it disgusting. Ira was incensed, but Aaron calmly questioned how she could serve such terrible tea to a guest. She scoffed, claiming that only weak bureaucrats drank tea, while true warriors like her had to be prepared to drink muddy water. This triggered a traumatic memory for Aaron of accompanying her on a military expedition. Ira then changed the subject, demanding to know why the Prime Minister himself was present for a tax audit and questioning if he had nothing better to do. A woman with glasses tried to explain to Ira that Lord Aaron had been working for several days straight. An aide then reported to Aaron that the documents they possessed were in perfect order, which Aaron confirmed was just as he had suspected. He thought to himself that visiting had confirmed his theory. The only thing on Ira's mind was war. He observed her lack of interest in luxury and haphazard interior design, concluding this wasn't intentional tax evasion, as she'd have no use for hoarded money. And above all, he reasoned, that the Borgia family was simply incapable of such sophisticated accounting manipulation. Meanwhile, at the Orbis Magic Academy student dorms, Carl lay in bed, recalling how they had nearly died because the boss goblin, supposedly level 15, was actually level 30. He wondered if the discrepancy was a simple mistake or if some other force had been at work. As he pondered, Tiana entered his room, calling his name. She asked if he was in any pain, and Carl reassured her that he was fine, apologizing for making her worry. He then noticed Scalan was also present and questioned why, wondering if he shouldn't be attending to Erica instead. Carl turned his head with a look of concern. Meanwhile, Johann Borgia expressed his relief as his sister, Erica, finally woke up. Erica immediately asked about the others, and Luna explained that while Katrina was still resting, everyone else was fine. In fact, Luna continued, the most energetic one of all was Belle, who was being swarmed by other students asking if he really defeated a level 30 goblin. Luna told a surprised Johann that Belle had apparently finished the beast with his stone fist punch after everyone else had been beaten down and were in dire straits. Elsewhere, a carriage turned as it came to a stop. Prime Minister Aaron and Commander Ira de Borgia stood together outside a building. Ira noted Aaron's pale face, teasingly wondering if he was that disgusted to be with her, before anxiously asking if she still smelled bad. Their arrival at the merchant Dennis's mansion shocked the owner, who cried out Ira's name in surprise. Dennis stammered that he had asked for prior notice for her visits, but Ira cut him off, demanding to know why that would be necessary. Aaron then stepped forward, asking if Dennis had something he was desperate to hide. Startled, Dennis looked at the man accompanying Ira and froze as he recognized the insignia on his clothes. He realized with horror that it was Prime Minister Aaron, who promptly announced that he was there to investigate Dennis's premises under his authority as the manager of the Borgia family's finances. Dennis weakly protested the sudden intrusion. Quickly changing his strategy, he offered them tea while his secretary supposedly went to fetch the requested documents. Ira watched the exchange with an unimpressed expression. While waiting, Aaron sampled the tea and commented on its fine quality, noting it was far superior to what the Borgia family served. He also observed the lavish furnishings, remarking that Dennis appeared to be living quite prosperously. Just then, an aide burst in to report to Aaron that they had captured the secretary, who had been trying to flee through a back entrance. A sharp, knowing look crossed Aaron's face. Aaron watched him with a stern expression. He identified the documents as a double ledger, leaving his steward, Lutz, confused. He explained to her that the money Dennis had been paying was only a fraction of the actual profits from the Borgia territory. He concluded that Dennis had been pocketing the vast majority of the funds, which caused Lutz to cry out in shock. Driven by desperation, Dennis pulled out a knife. Dennis worried internally that if he were caught, he would end up implicating others as well. He lamented that he had been so close to getting his daughter into a noble family, and with enough money, he could have even bought a title. Realizing he was ruined either way, a desperate look crossed his face. Watching him was a young man with dark hair, his eyes filled with cold intensity. The assailant threateningly brandished a knife. Aaron immediately recognized that the knife was poisoned and realized he had no time to cast his mental magic. As Dennis threatened that even a small scratch would mean death, Aaron calmly finished his sentence, acknowledging the danger. Ira de Borgia stood over the terrified merchant, her expression cold and unyielding. Under her stare, Dennis seemed to lose his composure and began begging for help. His pleas then twisted into a desperate scream, begging for someone to just kill him instead. Aaron noted that this strange effect was different from the mental magic he himself used. Ira explained that Dennis had simply been captivated by her eyes. Aaron, recognizing her, spoke her name. He then cried out, realizing his hand had been cut during the confrontation. Ira grabbed his hand and identified the substance as Kerberos poison, a toxin that would be instantly fatal to any normal human, shocking Aaron. As Aaron watched the wound on his hand begin to heal, Ira questioned who he thought she was, stating that detoxification and self-repair were basic skills for a combat type like herself. Aaron Hamilton maintained his complex expression, seemingly processing her words. Overcome with relief, he began to express his gratitude. In the next moment, he suddenly lost consciousness and collapsed onto her shoulder. As she fell into Aaron's arms, a nearby aide cried out her name in alarm. He himself was exhausted, with Louise having recently pointed out that he was unwell from working without sleep to clear the Borgia family of suspicion. Overcome with exhaustion, he collapses against Ira. Back at the Orbis Magic Academy. Inside, a group of students stands looking out a large window. Norin-sensei was formally apologizing, acknowledging the academy's full responsibility for the incident. She confidentially added that the appraiser was in custody and the incorrect dungeon level might not have been a simple mistake, a matter she would discuss with their guardians. Despite the circumstances, she confirmed the mission's outcome would still be reflected in their grades. Regarding the party score, she announced it would be divided equally between both parties for their cooperation, before moving on to individual experience points. Katrina, noting the lack of video evidence, declared that based on everyone's testimony, there was no doubt that Bear had defeated all the goblins, including the boss. Carl sighed internally, reflecting that Beru truly was the story's protagonist. He worried that, just like in the game, Beru would become the top student and charm all the heroines. But he quickly cut off the thought. However, Beru spoke up, insisting he was only able to succeed because the stage was set for him, as the boss had already been weakened. Therefore, Beru requested that the experience points be divided equally among everyone present. Luna whispered Beru's name, moved by his gesture. Carl watched the exchange, his expression unreadable. The scene then transitions to an ornate staircase inside a grand building. As they walked, Luna called out to Carl. He turned, looking over his shoulder, but it was Beru who approached him, hesitantly starting to speak. Beru thanked Carl, admitting it was his own mistake that brought the goblins. Yet Carl still arranged for Luna to heal him and Reina to protect him. He then asked if Carl had taken a gamble on him, trusting him to succeed. Carl observed that the hatred in Beru's eyes had vanished, replaced by a pure and simple desire to become stronger. He thought to himself that he still despised Beru. Suddenly, Tiana cried out his name in alarm as he appeared to fall down a flight of stairs. In a flash, a vision of his original self from his past life appeared, his expression resolute. The vision of his former self continued, his gaze unwavering and intense. Holding Erica close, Carl's past self reflected that with this, the threat of being killed by the story's protagonist had finally been eliminated. The scene then shifted to the Grand Hamilton family estate. During a weekend visit home, Carl was taken aback, while his sister Karen wondered why a certain guest was present. Ira de Borgia was equally shocked to find her own mother, Duchess Cassandra, at the Hamilton residence. Cassandra explained that she came because Carl had been complaining he couldn't sleep, supposedly because his pillow wasn't right. When Ira questioned this flimsy excuse, Cassandra quickly changed the subject, claiming they were merely discussing the management of the Borgia family's finances. In a separate conversation, Lutz reported that Aaron Hamilton had resolved the Borgia tax evasion issue leniently, resulting in only a 1-month suspension. An aide added that the king was overjoyed, as the merchant company's hidden assets were returned to the national treasury. The same aide noted it was a double victory, as the move also served to keep the aristocrat faction, who had colluded with the merchant Dennis, in check. Meanwhile, a maid mentioned that Sarah was nearing her due date and was looking for a place to stay for the birth. However, an aide explained that in exchange for the leniency shown to the Borgias, Lutz revealed they dispatched a formidable guard to counter potential retaliation, while Tiana added that Hamilton maids were now also visiting their home. Observing the new dynamic, Karen noted that the Borgia and Hamilton families were now complementing each other, covering their respective weaknesses. Standing together before their parents, Carl and Erica began to make a declaration about what they would do from now on. Carl stated they had a report for their parents, and Erica finished the thought, proclaiming their joint ambition to become the new protagonists of this world.